everyone, welcome back to my channel. Thank you to those of you who watched my last video. It was really fun to make, and this one was also pretty fun to make. So without further ado, let's jump into it. South Asian and Indian people communicate in a variety of ways beyond verbal or written speech. From their body language and physical proximity to their hand gestures, facial expressions, and eye movements, Indian people rely heavily on nonverbal cues to express how they feel. Scientists actually believe that nonverbal cues reveal more about a person's feelings than their words. So it's no wonder why we've learned to use and read visual information in our everyday communication. According to South Asian philosophy, the human body is filled with energy that transfers from person to person in mysterious ways. For example, the idea of the evil eye, or nazar, is cross-cultural. It refers to when a person looks at you and gives you bad luck, maybe because they're envious or have ill intentions toward you. In South Asia, certain cultural practices like putting on amulets, talismans, or a bit of ash can protect one's family members or friends from this bad energy. So this got me thinking about the power of the eyes. If looking at someone with envy gives them bad luck, does looking at someone with love give them good luck or blessings? Love is perhaps the most important emotion within the South Asian community. It's core to our philosophies, spiritual beliefs, and media. Most of our films and television programs are about relationships, dynamics, and psychology. But how do writers, directors, and cinematographers communicate love visually? You might be familiar with shots of characters looking at each other for a long time. But can these shots mean different things, depending on what's going on? Yes, I think so. In this video, I'll discuss how Indians communicate different types of love through their eyes, as reflected in a few of their films. To be clear, the romantic gaze discussed in this video can be seen in non-Indian media, such as films made in other parts of South Asia, like Pakistan and Sri Lanka, and even the Middle East. Western media has its own version of the romantic gaze, but its underlying philosophical, spiritual, and cultural themes differ from those mentioned in this video. With that being said, the films I'm going to be discussing were all made by Indian creators. Let's first discuss some recurring themes or big picture ideas surrounding the Indian romantic gaze. 1. Distance makes the heart grow fonder. Indians enjoy separating two people in love, either using physical or social barriers. Physically, lovers might be separated due to their families moving away from each other, or one lover disappearing or being summoned for a special mission. Socially, lovers might be separated due to cultural norms. In this case, lovers might not be physically far apart, but social propriety prevents them from coming together. For instance, these characters could belong to different social classes, cultures, religious affiliations, or simply they might be betrothed to other people. In either case, lovers share minimal contact and are forced to make do with their memories of one another. Visually, they might also share stolen glances while in public, which might be the only time they see each other. In this context, looking is considered chaste, socially acceptable, and technically sinless. Indians also enjoy portraying slow burn stories in which two characters pine for each other for years, exhibiting undying devotion in spite of the fact that they are not together. This separation can enhance the audience's impression of the lover's intensity, desire, and focus on each other. 2. Self-denial and sacrifice are expressions of love. South Asian people have a long history with the practice of self-denial, dating back thousands of years when ascetic beings renounced food, water, and sleep in order to obtain boons from God. Nowadays, many Indians fast on specific days of the week to appease their respective deities. Mahatma Gandhi was known for fasting for long stretches of time to resist British rule in India, as well as encourage peace among warring factions of Hindus and Muslims. In South Asian films, lovers often put their personal happiness and comfort aside in favor of a larger purpose, say preserving their family's honor, tradition, or structure. In this way, lovers might agree to marry someone of their parents' choice, or vow to stay away from their beloved. This act is typically portrayed as the ultimate sacrifice, but also a way to validate their love. Because their love is true, it is selfless and doesn't need to be fulfilled to be experienced. Visually, this theme can be expressed when one or both characters look at the other, knowing that they will need to walk away. This can symbolize the selfless nature of their relationship. 3. Dying for love is heroic. Indians' history with self-denial might speak to deeper social mores related to chastity, dignity, and duty to one's country, family, or honor. Indian people know that love is the highest principle, but their behavior also suggests that only a lover who denies himself love is worthy of it. Therefore, a lover who dies for the sake of love is a martyr and a hero. For instance, he might die out of desperation for an inaccessible beloved, directing his attention toward them like a weary soldier in search of food and shelter. A 2021 paper that analyzed Bollywood songs found that certain lyrics imply that a lover's eyes are vessels through which they can drink in the sight of their beloved and remember it forever. These lyrics paint the image of a lover being a mad person that craves the vision of their beloved like a fish out of water. Moreover, these lyrics imply that love for the beloved is a precious substance, like gold or mercury, that must be protected at all costs. Heroes are similarly known for traversing difficult terrain to pursue treasure. 4. Loving is worship and looking is darshan. Darshan in Hinduism refers to divine vision, or seeing one's chosen deity and being seen by them. Devotees might travel far on foot for a glimpse of their beloved deity's statue. They might stand in line for hours for the opportunity to offer flowers at the statue's feet and bow their heads. Darshan is considered to be the highest form of seeing, in which no words need to be spoken. God can hear everything that a devotee says, and a devotee is surrendered to whatever God gives them. In her devotional poetry, Mirabai describes her love for God as a plant that she waters with her tears, or a living, breathing entity that she must nourish. Even Bollywood lyrics can compare worldly love to an ocean and describe a lover's wish to dissolve or drown in it, which can be symbolized by closing their eyes. Yoga philosophy describes union with God similarly, in which a devotee compares themselves to a grain of salt and God to an ocean. Devotees also close their eyes during meditation to further their experience of this. In short, as we can observe by thinking about these themes, looking at someone with love can vary in intensity, but there are similar themes behind these portrayals. Let's get more specific. How do filmmakers communicate different types of love within South Asian stories? Psychology research demonstrates that humans move their eyes in ways that align with their intentions or goals. For example, in a film, if a hero is purely attracted to a heroine and desires her, he'll probably stare at her body. However, if a hero feels more than that, like a desire to get to know her, he'll probably look at her face. So let's focus on gazes directed toward the face, meaning those related to love or affection. The first stage of any romantic relationship in films is courtship, meaning the process by which two people meet, get to know each other, and form a bond. Most Indian films I've seen use gazes to show how characters are getting along, and these looks change as characters move from initial attraction to affection, and finally, mutual understanding. In Dilwale, Dulhania, Le Jayenge, there's a famous scene when Raj watches Simran walk away, and he says to himself, "Raj, if she loves you, she'll turn around." So he watches her walk, and she's not turning around, so he says under his breath, "Turn around, turn around." And right before she gets on the train, she turns around. Why is this scene so memorable? It suggests that Simran does love Raj, but also that she has many things on her mind that she's not saying. It adds depth to this love story that wasn't there before. In other words, a gaze is not just a gaze. It makes the audience want to read into these interactions more closely to better understand the characters. Further, it forces us to pay attention to everything. A second scene that I find memorable is when Raj and Simran are saying goodbye to each other at the train station after spending a month in Europe together. Simran asks Raj if he'll come to her wedding, and he simply says, "No, I won't come." And with a smile, he looks at her and walks away. This scene hurts because we know Raj held himself back from telling Simran the truth about his feelings, which is a form of love here. It wouldn't be appropriate for him to do so when she's okay marrying someone else. Also, his final look toward her silently communicates his loss, his sacrifice. In his mind, he's never going to see her again. As we know from the beginning of the story, Raj is quite a playboy. He's outgoing, spoiled, roguish, flirtatious, and doesn't take anything seriously. Simran has changed him, and she doesn't even realize it. So his discipline and sacrifice feel significant. Dil De Chuke Sanam also uses visual symbolism to communicate how romantic relationships evolve by contrasting Nandini's relationship with her lover Samir with that of her husband Vadraj. There are so many motifs or recurring symbols in this movie, so I've tried to limit myself to those related to the eyes. But even then, there are a lot. Nandini's relationship with Samir is cloying, flirtatious, and passionate. From their first to their last conversation, the eyes are explicitly mentioned to communicate their love for one another. When she first meets Samir, Nandini stares at him and tells him to look away. Samir says that her eyes have captured him and he physically can't. Then Nandini starts lifting a chandelier and challenges him.
देखते हैं किसकी पलकें पहले झपकती हैं.
The chandelier drops and Samir catches it, still not blinking. There's a long shot of them looking at each other and Samir says, "If you keep staring at me, you'll fall in love with me." Nandini then blinks, suggesting that she's resisting this urge to fall in love with him. This sequence sets up their initial dynamic, which is playful and sparring. It also sets a precedent for how these characters will express their feelings through their eyes. In one of the songs, Nandini and Samir steal glances at each other in the midst of a wedding. Their eyes take on a life of their own, using the background instruments, like bells and the flute. It's really beautiful. The refrain of this song is, "Please forgive the trespasses of my eyes. When they look at you for a moment, then the thing that my lips should say, they speak to you." Throughout their time together, Nandini and Samir use their eyes to communicate their growing closeness. It helps as they're both bad at expressing their feelings in words.
I love you. voice.
सिर्फ आवाज
And I love your eyes.
और
तुम्हारे मम्मी, तुम्हारे डैडी, तुम्हारे कुक देखो, ये लड्डू, फूल,
बिल्कुल
फर्नीचर.
नहीं बुढ़ा हो तुम.
While Nandini and Samir court each other using gazes, the film sets up the next act in which Samir falls short. He throws a few tantrums in the film, demonstrating the fact that he's still quite juvenile. In one case, Nandini goads him into eating a lot of chilies and ultimately wins him over by feeding him honey, again like he's a child. When Nandini accidentally slaps him, Samir locks himself in his room and refuses to speak to her. It's at this point where we meet Vanraj, a simple man who gazes at Nandini while she dances during the wedding celebration. In the song that Nandini dances to, she says to her friends, "Bring me a lemon," which in this case means lover. When Nandini throws the lemon, Vanraj catches it, foreshadowing that he will ultimately be paired with Nandini. But Nandini considers Samir to be her lemon, or beloved. She kind of calls him that when they meet. But Samir is not at Nandini's performance when she's asking for a lemon. He couldn't possibly catch it. Therefore, Samir essentially takes himself out of the running because of his childish nature. When Nandini marries Vanraj, she communicates her feelings toward him with her eyes. At first, she pays him no mind, ignoring him and looking dead inside. She just refuses to acknowledge him. When Vanraj takes Nandini to Italy to find Samir and demonstrates his decency again and again, Nandini tentatively starts to look at Vanraj with understanding. Also, the first time she speaks normally to him, this happens.
तुम मैगजीन उल्टा पढ़ रही हो.
This suggests that Nandini has been perceiving Vanraj all wrong and is now turning things around. These two also share a look of understanding when Nandini eats a bunch of chilies at a restaurant out of frustration. Remember, Samir did that before. Vanraj cuts through these feelings when he says,
Take the glass and don't create a scene.
This moment helped Nandini drop her childish tendencies and grow up a little. It's also a sign she's outgrowing Samir. Let's now contrast the moments when Samir and Vanraj respectively leave Nandini. There are several interesting differences between these partings. In Samir's case, he's forced to leave when Nandini's father finds out about their illicit relationship. Nandini is heartbroken and watches Samir leave from a balcony. Samir then prompts her to freeze, alluding to their game. Then he's the one to leave. In Vanraj's case, he watches Nandini run up a flight of stairs as she goes to meet Samir in Italy. Vanraj watches Nandini until the very last moment, demonstrating his longing for her. Also, Nandini is positioned above both men during their respective partings, but she is much higher in Vanraj's case, suggesting that both men regard and love her, but the loss is much greater for Vanraj. As Nandini quickly retreats, it's almost like Vanraj is falling from a great height. Finally, at Nandini and Samir's meeting in Italy, he says,
मेरी आंखों में देखो नंदिनी. Oh my God. जो प्यार मुझे तुम्हारी आंखों में दिखाई देता था, आज वो प्यार नहीं है.
Nandini now explicitly says,
तुमने मुझे प्यार करना सिखाया सभी, मगर प्यार निभाना मैंने अपने पति से सीखा है.
This scene mirrors their first meeting and nicely wraps up their relationship. In short, Nandini, Samir, and Vanraj all communicate their feelings through their gazes, and it's such a fascinating case study. I think Veer-Zaara offers a terrific example of the next type of gaze, which represents self-sacrifice in the face of societal censure. The film tells the love story of an Indian man and a Pakistani woman and frequently oscillates between their two countries and cultures. At one point, Veer receives a call from Zara's friend saying, "Zara loves you, but she's getting married to someone else. Please come to Lahore and take Zara away. She won't be able to take this step by herself. She says you could give your life for her. How much do you love Zara?" In the present, Veer thinks about that question. How much do I love Zara? And he thinks to himself, I couldn't answer that question then, and I can't answer it now. This dialogue emphasizes the fact that Veer's love for Zara cannot be expressed in words. He's been in prison for 22 years thinking only of her, and he's still not able to find the words. Previously, when Veer reaches Lahore, he goes to meet Zara in a mosque. Two things are significant here. The mosque increases the gravity of the situation. Veer and Zara would be meeting in a place that represents divine union and prayer, suggesting that their love is similar. Second, Zara is in the presence of her family and future in-laws. Veer and Zara's union is blasphemous and will trigger societal censure. Therefore, this is a tense and dangerous situation. As Veer enters the mosque, a qawwali plays in the background. A qawwali is a devotional song within the Sufi Muslim tradition. These songs are associated with intense feelings, like devotion toward God. The qawwali in this film intensifies the drama of this moment, but also narrates how Veer and Zara communicate with their eyes. As soon as Veer enters, Zara raises her eyes, sensing that something is different. The music similarly rises, almost as if her pulse has risen. Veer stands for a long beat, gazing at her without her knowing. It's almost as if he's drinking her in, a theme often used in Sufi or devotional poetry to convey how a lover seeks to drink in his beloved like they are a rare wine. One of the lines in the song is, "Please grant me this one blessing. Just look at me once. I'll give my heart to you. I'll lose my life to you, just like a moth who dies for the flame." Veer's state of mind is such that he's completely focused on getting Zara to look at him. Zara is pulled by the intensity of his gaze and turns around. She holds it and slowly approaches him as the song gets louder and louder. Finally, she embraces him, and the song lyrics say, "Why is this society like this? Don't ask me about my sorrow. I'm under the control of the rituals of the world. Why is love a crime?" Later, when Zara's mother begs Veer to leave Zara alone, he replies, "People say that love is blind. So we couldn't see anyone apart from each other. We didn't see if anyone was hurt or saddened, or if anyone's life was at stake. We just saw each other. But now everything is clear." When Veer and Zara meet later, they mutually agree to sacrifice their love for the sake of her family. When Zara says that she shouldn't have come forward and embraced him, Veer says, "What you call a naive gesture will get me through the rest of my life. If you take that away from me, then what will I take back home?" This scene beautifully shows an example of love that transcends typical romance in favor of something timeless. Veer is a man who navigates societal censure and love. He is aware of both and chooses that which will serve everyone. He is able to put his own feelings aside for the sake of his beloved's honor. Finally, at no point do Veer and Zara directly express their feelings for one another. They always use indirect methods, including their gazes, and we understand. Words cannot capture the depth of their feelings. This love is nearly spiritual, and it feels much better to leave it untouched. The third category of gazes refers to the total erasure of the self. While within the courting and self-sacrifice categories, lovers chipped away at their individual selves, lovers in the third category have reached a new level of madness or meditation. The Saudi Arabian story of Laila Majnun can serve as our benchmark for this category. Laila and Majnun long for each other as if their lives depended on it. Qais, or Majnun as he comes to be known, is a visual testament to what happens when a person surrenders completely to love, not caring what society says or does. When Qais one day expresses his undying devotion to Leela, he is exiled from society and goes to live in the forest. This doesn't stop him from chanting the name of Leela, almost as if it's a prayer. In other words, Majnun has abandoned everything for the sake of his beloved. He has annihilated his small self for the sake of devotion. In the 1976 film, Majnun enters a shrine and prays that he receive a vision of Leela or else he'll die. When Leela suddenly appears, they share a long look. As an audience member, this moment does feel like God's miracle. The stakes for Majnun are really that high. You might recall that Veer from Veer-Zaara donned a similar look while in prison. Perhaps that was a nod to Laila Majnun. Also, the title of this song is strikingly similar to the Qawwali in Veer-Zaara. I think all of this was on purpose. In the tradition of Laila Majnun, I would be remiss if I didn't analyze what I believe to be Sanjay Leela Bhansali's magnum opus, Devdas. This 2002 film is an adaptation of a popular book by a Bengali author published in 1917. The 1955 film adaptation of this book also received high praise, and I think it's because of the inherent power of this tale. But let's jump back to the 2002 film, because the creators went above and beyond to show the depth of this love story. One motif that plays heavily in the 2002 film is that of the chakoor bird and the moon. In Indian mythology, the chakoor bird is said to drink moonlight. It weeps in anticipation of nightfall and longs to see the moon's sweet rays and her winsome smile. It only experiences peace when the moon is visible. When it's daytime again, the chakoor bird despairs once more. Another important aspect of this allegory is the doomed nature of this romance. The moon exists in the sky and the bird on earth. The two will never be one, but this doesn't deter the chakoor bird. Similarly, Devdas is the story of doomed love. While Bado and Devdas love each other intensely, she is married off to someone else quite early in the plot. Dev is left to ruminate on what he has lost, causing him to unravel, not unlike Majnun. The 2002 film explicitly compares Bado's face to that of the moon. When Dev goes to see her after 10 years of separation, he struggles to catch a glimpse of her because she keeps hiding her face in her bed canopy or her hair, sort of how the moon hides behind clouds. Instead, she chooses to show herself later that night. As Bado sleeps outside, the full moon shines on her face. Dev sits beside her and gazes at her face for a little while. When Dev and Bado first meet, he tells her that she shouldn't be so vain. Not even the moon is that proud. And she says, "How could the moon be vain when it has so many scars?" When Dev meets Bado right before her wedding, she says, "Today we are equals. If people call you a landowner, then I'll pride myself in being an aristocrat." Dev says, "So much vanity. Not even the moon is that vain." And Bado repeats herself, "How can the moon be vain with all of its scars?" Using a necklace, Dev scars her face to bring down her pride, equate her with the moon, and in his own way, make Bado his. I don't condone violence, but this supports my argument. As we all know, Dev devolves from a respected member of society to a man consumed by grief. He can't forget Bado no matter what he does, and he openly weeps, drinks, and wanders Bengal in search of peace, like the chakoor bird weeping during the day. Chandramukhi's brothel, where he spends a lot of time, is garishly lit with gold, almost as if she represents the sun, which the chakoor bird can't stand. but he has nowhere else to go. And the fact that Chandramukhi's name means moon face could signify that she's trying to be Dev's beloved, but he can see right through her, and she's not really the moon to him. In contrast, Bado is almost always surrounded by cool tones, which are associated with nighttime and the moon. At one point, Dev sings, "I pray for one glimpse of hers. That's all. That's all." At this point, Dev realizes he's dying, and because he swore to Bado to come to her doorstep before his death, he hastens, traveling far to reach her in-laws' house. Finally, he reaches it and lays down, like the chakor bird waiting for nightfall. When Bado learns that the dying man outside her house is Dev, she rushes out, trying to reach him before it's too late. Dev's final wish is to catch a glimpse of Bado. His weakened eyes can just make out a figure running toward him, like a waxing moon. But the doors eclipse her, and Devdas dies. This cinematic sequence might be the most impressive one I've ever seen, and I think it's because our collective grief is so intense. For Dev and Bado to be so close to one another and not come together feels like a betrayal. We knew that this romance was doomed as soon as Bado married someone else, so why did we continue watching? It's because we knew that they would maintain their love for one another in spite of it all. Dev's behavior reminds us of Majnu's lack of concern for social propriety. The film reminds us of the glory of martyrdom and sacrifice for the sake of love. Again, these themes are deeply spiritual, drawing upon devotional traditions across faiths. Dev is like a chakor bird, longing for a glimpse of the moon. She nourishes his soul. And in spite of the fact that their love can never be fulfilled, he seeks her his entire life, forgetting all else. I believe Indian and South Asian creators are highly aware of the value of visual storytelling, particularly conveying love through one's eyes and face. They likely choose motifs based on their film's plot and characters, and place these motifs as strategic points to intensify the story. As a result, audience members must actively participate in the viewing process. Because important dialogue and emotions can often be nonverbal, it forces us to watch everything. In short, nonverbal communication, like gazing, can be more effective than words in conveying love. Maybe the next time you're watching a film or show, you'll find even more nonverbal cues that communicate nuanced emotions. Let me know some of your favorite love stories and ways of expressing love on screen. Thanks for watching, everybody.